The office was white-walled and ceilinged. His desk was positioned so he sat between two tram lines of evenly spaced fluorescent light. The whiteness of his walls and the harshness of his lights, giving the impression, if he allowed his concentration to wax and vision to blur, that they stretched off, unbroken, never stopping. Parallel lines of fluorescent lights, all the way to infinity. He sipped at the coffee from his mug. It was weak, bitter. Like me, he thought, then chided himself for such baseless negativity. I didn't mean that, he thought. It was a joke, he reinforced. He sipped at the coffee again, this time creating a slurping noise as he did so. He glanced around to see if it provoked the ire in some minor way of his co-workers. His desk mates on either side seemed unaffected. He sipped again. And again. And again. His desk mate to his right got up and left the row, walked around to the back of him, and left the office. He, essentially, doesn't exist now, he thought. Or to him, I don't exist. He began to focus on the click-clacking of his other desk-mates typing. She types so fast, he thought. She must have 1,000,000 fingers, jumping and dancing across the keys. A chorus line of fingers, decorated with little red-painted nails. He imagined this. The chorus line of fingers. It caused him to shudder involuntarily, which made him drop his mug onto his lap, spilling the remaining contents of the mug, which then rolled onto the floor, empty, whilst his lap gently steamed. Click-clack, 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 went his desk mate. He glowered at himself and bent over without leaving his chair to pick up the mug. A shadow passed over him as he bent, and he followed it with his gaze, catching as he did so the glimpse of a pair of bare feet scurrying past. He sat up and turned to where their feet had run to, the chair previously occupied by his desk mate. He stared. He did not know him well. They had not been friends, but he knew him enough to recognize certain changes in his bearing, certain changes in his dress. Noticeable, commentable things. Click-clack, 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 went his other desk-mate. The man who no longer existed had been a small, blonde, skinny man who wore glasses. He sat so close to his computer screen that the refraction on his glasses made it look like his lenses were two separate, much smaller screens. The figure sat next to him was currently wearing no glasses. It was not wearing shoes or shirt or tie or trouser. It could only be said to be dressed if you considered strange patches and clusters of dirty brown hair to be clothing. It was tall, the thing, and it was fat by human standards. It was fat by most zoological standards. It had long, gangly legs that surely could not support such bulk, and were folded strangely so it could sit at the chair. Its arms again were long and thin, ending in large, shovel-sized hands. He followed the arms up with his eyes, and they met the eyes of the thing. Large black holes bored into the flesh of its neckless, shoulderless dome of a head. The thing had a lipless, flat mouth, which it opened to smile, revealing large, flat teeth the size of clothes pegs, keeping locked behind them a slimy grey, pink tongue. The thing breathed. Click-clack, 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 went the non-thing desk-mate. He turned away. Looking back at his screen, he saw another glimpse of the thing in his monitor, and looked instead at the lines of fluorescent light. He tried to take another sip from his empty coffee mug, and was reminded of the warm damp in his trousers. Thankfully, he had not added to it. The clicking and clacking abruptly stopped. "Would anyone like a coffee?" said the enthusiastic voice of his now currently only human deskmate. "No, thank you," he tried to say. Went his mouth, which must have sounded like "yes, please" to his colleague. And the thing. She walked towards him and the thing, and took his mug from his unresisting hands. Picked up the mug from next to the long, inert arms of the thing. He followed her as she walked out of the office to the kitchen. She doesn't exist, he thought, then immediately cursed himself for the thought. He looked back towards the thing. It grinned at him. It went gently, its voice a wheeze that carried a surprising amount of force to it, not in volume, but in force of expelled air, each gentle sound hitting the skin and his body like a little icy blast. The thing stared at him, and he stared back. He looked away into his computer screen. He felt the thing move. It was behind him, its ice breath causing the hairs on his neck to stand to attention. He closed his eyes and opened them again to stare up at the tram lines of fluorescent lights, allowing his vision to fade, allowing office walls to melt away and the lights to carry on to infinity. The sensation of the breath on his neck grew faint, and he was travelling at the speed of light into the boundless infinity of fluorescence, away from his desk, away from the thing. A noise like a dial-up modem brought him back to the world with a jerk. The thing was back at its desk, in its huge hands, a mug of something steaming. The modem shriek happened again, and he turned to face a purple cloud, translucent and dotted with eyes that would flicker like malfunctioning monitors. In a wisp of matter, the memory of a tentacle as it held out a steaming mug. He took it mutely. The cloud hovered down the row to his former colleague's desk. He looked into the warm mug. It was full of a substance that moved like liquid, yet looked like television static. He took a sip. His mouth fizzed. The cloud made another modem death scream and hovered down to settle onto his former colleague's computer. It gave another electronic shout, and the computer was transformed into a steaming ham, antennae sticking from the top. Another descent, another noise, and it was transformed into a 10-legged cat, which then promptly ran away. The cloud somehow seemed to turn towards him. It moved closer, floating and emitting its horrible modem sounds as it came, transforming phones and calculators, desk tidies, into mice, cockroaches, and a corded burger phone, respectively. The blinking, flickering cloud grew closer. Came the icy blast from behind him. He got up suddenly and made a run for the exit. He heard the desk overturn as the thing followed, heard a modem scream as the cloud was knocked by the thing. He could hear its heavy, flat feet slopping on the ground as it ran. He reached the office door and yanked it open to reveal an endless, gaping, screaming void. This should not have been here. This should have been a foyer, he thought desperately. He stood on the precipice and thought as the thing drew closer and closer. He gazed into the void and thought, I don't exist. He didn't.